All right, everybody, we are just now getting started as you pile into the Zoom room. Thank you so much for joining us. This is Jeff Martin with Magic City Books. I'm so thrilled to have you all with us tonight for our ongoing virtual author event series, which we have been doing since about April of 2020. And we are rapidly approaching our 200th virtual author event, which we have done that time. And we've talked to everyone under the sun. It's been a really great way to stay connected with all of you in this weird moment that we're living in right now. And we actually did a couple of real things last week. We had a great outdoor event for the book launch for Joy Harjo for her wonderful memoir, which just came out called Poet Warrior. So we did that outside. And then we had a wonderful event at the Greenwood Cultural Center with Ashley C. Ford for her memoir, Somebody's Daughter, which was wonderful as well. But we're going to be kind of pivoting back to some virtuals for, a little while. So hopefully things will calm down. We'll get to do some more in-person things, in the near future. But it's a great thing to have this technology. I was thinking the other day, if this pandemic had, happened 10 or 12 years ago, who knows what tools we would have had to stay connected. So it's in some ways a lucky thing that we live in this Zoom age so we can stay connected just like this. We have some stuff coming up. I won't give you the full rundown, but I would encourage you to go to our website, magiccitybooks.com, and you can see the full list, including things like we have a program with Anita Hill coming up for the 30th anniversary of her testimony, Unforgettable Testimony. As you know, she's from here in Oklahoma, has some amazing stories to tell. We have John Lithgow. We're going to be the actor John Lithgow. We're going to be doing a program with him and all kinds of people in between. So just check our website for that. Couldn't be more excited about tonight's event. When you have an author you love and you're kind of waiting for that next thing, and then you're kind of waiting, and it's like this kind of this hole in your heart that you're waiting to be filled, and then one day you get the news that something is happening, something's coming, and this could be a song that by a songwriter who's finally putting an album out, or a movie director is finally putting a movie out. But for us, of course, it's books and it's stories. And when we heard that Sandra Cisneros had some new fiction coming down the road, I think we were all very, very excited to hear that news, and even more excited to see that this beautiful book, Martita, I Remember You, was kind of such a great presentation. If you have the book, many of you do, and Sandra was nice enough to sign book plates for all of you as well. It's kind of a dual presentation. So it's a bilingual edition. You have on one side, of course, you have the English version. You flip the book over and you have this beautiful edition here in Spanish as well. And there it is. And we are so lucky tonight to have the translator, Liliana Valenzuela, joining us for this conversation. Liliana has translated works by Julia Alvarez, Rodolfo Anaya, more works by Sandra, Ana Castillo, a who's who that she's worked with, and not to mention being a really acclaimed and wonderful poet as well on top of that. So I'll be able to sit back like you guys and enjoy this conversation as an audience member tonight. We want to encourage you to be part of this and ask some questions. So if you'll put those into the Q&A there, we'll get to some of those in the last 10 or 15 minutes of tonight's event. I know so many people have told me their stories about the work of Sandra Cisneros and what it's meant to them. And I think it's, goes without saying that House on Mango Street is a contemporary classic and is a book that we'll be reading and talking about, I think, long after we've left this earth, and will be something that just continues on to affect generation after generation. Sandra has won a MacArthur Genius Grant. She's kind of done it all. But I think with this new book, Martita, I Remember You, you're going to be, some of you probably have had the chance to read it. I won't go over what it is. We'll save that for this conversation, but it's quite a special experience. And so without any further ado, I want to turn this over to our moderator, Liliana Valenzuela, and give a big welcome to our very special guest, Sandra Cisneros. Welcome to both of you.
Hi, thank you so much, Jeff, and hi, Sandra, good to see you in the Zoom sphere. I'm in Austin, you're in San Miguel de Allende, Mexico. We switched places in a way, and thank you everyone for joining us. I'm very excited to be here and to be having this conversation with you about your latest book, who also happens to be my latest collaboration with you as a translator, and it just came up off the press last week, so it's hot. And why don't you tell us what was the inspiration for this story? Where did it come from?
Well, Liliana, this is a very familiar territory to be talking with you. I think we've been working together, 30 years? So every time we work on a project together, I feel like we're on a car trip together. And I so enjoy working with you because you're a poet too. And basically beneath the fiction writing self, I feel I'm still a poet. So this is a story that I began early 90s, a long time ago. It was a short story. It was supposed to be part of my collection, Woman Hollering Creek. And I remember that I wrote it only up until the scene where the characters are at a New Year's Eve party. That was the story, just that. And I handed it in to my editor and to my agent, and they felt that wasn't enough, that the story needed to have a conclusion. And they also felt it didn't fit with the rest of the themes of the other stories in the collection were all about the Southwest. And I had to concede, well, you're right, but I don't have an ending just yet. Isn't this the ending? No. And, I have to trust when I'm this close to working on a project, what my editors or my loved ones tell me. So I put it aside. And it was always a favorite story of my friend Dennis. Dennis was my classmate at Iowa and even before Iowa, and basically my fiction writing mentor, because I've never taken a fiction writing course. And he kept bugging me, go back to that story. Aren't you going to finish that story? I'm busy. I'm writing a novel, or I'm busy working on something else, or I'm moving to another country. Life got in the way. And I finally had some time to go back to it. It's a story that I've loved. I love the voices and the people in it. And I wanted to go back to it. And I finally, now that I'm living here in Mexico, was able to return to it and give it attention. And more than anything, I started it when I was about 30, end of my 30s. I'm 66 now. I really feel I needed more time to live a life rather than, where I was mid-30s, late 30s, wherever I was when I began the story. I needed more time to have lived a life and to understand my youth from a perspective that I could see myself. So that's maybe why I couldn't finish it before. I tried to make it a bigger work. I didn't want to be. And so it is what it is. I don't know what it is, but yeah.
It's a wonderful story about the friendship of these three women who meet in Europe, and you have created this wonderful characters that I guess drawn from different women, composite of women you met. So there's Corina from Chicago, Mexican American Chicana, traveling for the first time in Europe, and Martita of the title, who is from Buenos Aires, and Paola from Italy. And these three women support each other, love each other, host each other in each other's homes when they're running out of money in one of the most expensive cities in the world. And they're trying to make it, but it's hard. And so it's kind of an unglamorous version of Paris, but yet you summon up such detail that it really brings it to life. Like, I wonder if you would like to share that section where you have all the detail of what they see in the market, all the things they can look at, but they can't buy except for maybe a few tangerines, some nuts, maybe a crepe.
Yeah, Dennis, again, going back to Dennis, he said, this is a Christmas story. I said, yeah, it is kind of a Christmas story. It's kind of like a Charles Dickens tale in a way of being down and out in Paris. So I'll read a section, that section you like.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you.
On Christmas Eve, no one invites us to dinner. Marta and Paula and I meet at Bubu with a paper bag of walnuts, a demi-kilo of tangerines, a bar of Swiss chocolate. We look in the bright windows, an Indian shop full of gauzy French scarves, leather strings of brass bells, patchouli incense, wicker baskets, rattan chairs, a woman selling roasted chestnuts, open-air stalls with great downy geese hung by their feet, flaccid necks, pheasants with all of their plumage, waxy wheels of cheeses as creamy as calla lilies, chocolates wrapped in gold foil, blood oranges from Spain, green bananas and mangoes from Senegal, avocados from Israel, Greek pistachios, feathery tulips the color of flamingos on thick green stems, shops with silk camisoles and scented drawer paper, soaps that smell of carnations, little bunches of lavender tied with ribbon, a peach parasol lampshade, a white iron bed with an antique comforter, and the linen all cutwork and edged with Battenberg lace and Marilyn Monroe alarm clocks. Look, look, Martita. You bury your head on my shoulder and say, please, can't we go now? I'm so cold. So this is not your glamorous Paris. This is really the underbelly Paris. And even the beautiful things are so beyond reach of our protagonist and her companions.
Yeah, it's so rich, so lyrical. I mean, it's almost like a poem, like an object poem in itself. This list of wonderful, marvelous things. Did you write that down somewhere as you were traveling, or did you try to remember what it was?
Well, in a court of law, Lily, I can't be sure. Because, I remember keeping, having a notebook. And if you went to my archives that are now at Texas State in San Marcos, maybe somebody could find my notebook, but I don't have any of those things anymore. Once I moved to Mexico, I let everything go. And so in court of law, I can't really tell you. I'm even impressed. I'll sometimes look and say, how did I know this? Or where did this come from? Some things came from shards of memory. I do remember. I have this incredible memory for uncomfortable things that happen to me. And when I do nice things or kind things for people, I can't even remember. People remind me that I did something. And I'll say, are you sure that was me? But if there's ever what I call the exploding cigar of life, some failure, some embarrassing thing, something horrible, I'm sure to remember it.
Yeah, and that's what I like, that you put side by side all this wonderful sensory detail, including the fact that they were freezing while they were taking that walk. And you really feel the cold of those Parisian winters when you don't have the proper clothing or the proper shelter, and how painful that can be. You're so good at remembering those sensations.
It seems like I'm always in Paris at the worst time. Like that first trip that this is based on was in November, December, January. And then when I go back, it seems they invite me, how they say April in Paris? April in Paris is cold.
And rainy.
And rainy. I've never been there where it hasn't been rainy or cold, or I haven't felt uncomfortable. I don't know, maybe I just have bad luck with Paris. But what's indelible for me is that memory of not having money that first time that this story is based on, and how I was mistaken for North African and treated like the way the North Africans are treated in Paris. So I felt myself befriended in reality, in real life, by people who were immigrants. And that's what this story is about, people that are just kind of living, surviving in the belly of the beast.
Right, yeah, and it was very refreshing for me to read this story from the point of view of a woman traveling alone in Europe, which we haven't read too many about, and especially for a Latina and a Chicana, from her point of view, of her family being very strict and not wanting her to venture very far, but yet she does. And she meets this other women traveling too, and all the Latin Americans in Europe, in Paris, that there's a whole underground that I have known about, traveling myself and not knowing other people who have done so, but it really has appeared in stories. So I thought that was a really interesting point of view and kind of like a different side to that story.
Yeah, you're right about that. When we see Paris, we see Hemingway or Fitzgerald, and and I think that those set up expectations for writers in later years, or James Baldwin. And so you want to go there because you think, oh, that's where the writers hang out, or that's where so-and-so lived. And so you think, especially when you're young, that it's going to validate you and make you a real writer. If you travel places where other writers have been, made their mark.
Right, and like when Corina is thinking about going to the Café de Magot, and she's trying and trying, but it's like she feels like she doesn't really belong there. People are going to look at her weird.
She's afraid to go. And do you remember that age when you were afraid to go into places because of a look a waiter gave you, or the looks the customers gave you, or you think everybody's staring at you? Well, maybe they are, maybe they're not, but you still feel terrified of doing any kind of meal or coffee or a glass of whatever alone. No?
I know, yeah. I think that's one of the advantages of age, that that you feel freer, and most of the time people are not staring at you.
Well, even if they are, at our age, we don't care.
Exactly. Yeah, and I love what you did with the languages too, of these three characters, mixing not only Spanish as you usually do, but also putting in some French, some Italian, and how foreigners in a foreign country communicate or try to communicate in this kind of broken language that is very beautiful too, because it's kind of funny and charming, and it's its own mix. And I think you reproduced it really well on the page.
You had the challenge because you had to translate all of this. And I remember when I was living in Sarajevo, and I would learn, maybe a noun and a verb, and then interchange it, like the walnut game, with an object. And I would make all kinds of mistakes, but I mused at my host, I would say things like, I like, jasnam. And one day I said, oh, I know how to say I am and I like. And one day I thought I was saying I am cold. I said, jasnam zima. And everybody laughed. They said, no, you've just said I am winter. So those kinds of things that mistakes I made, and letters I get from people who aren't native English speakers, that they helped me a lot with creating the letters portion and the communication between the girls, so that it would sound authentic.
Right, and first they're communicating in person as all these different things happen to them, and then they're communicating through letters.
Right.
Yeah, when they're a little bit older and they're keeping up with each other, but then they lose track of each other. And Corina is remembering sitting in her apartment in Chicago, wondering what happened to this women.
Yeah,
that she was so close to at one point.
Well, you had asked me once that, is there a real Martita? And there is, and I wonder if I will ever find her again. This is my note in a bottle to perhaps search for her, because with the years, I've lost addresses. My memory no longer holds last names. So I don't even know what her last name is. So maybe this story will, help me find her. I don't even know how to do Facebook. I don't do Facebook, but perhaps this story will find the real women, or probably everybody will think they are Martita when they're not. Well, that happens a lot. I'll write something and my family will say, that's me. And I wasn't writing about them at all. So there'll be people that say, I'm Martita, but maybe everybody's Martita. No, that's what I think.
Yes.
I had to draw from my own life to create Martita and other people, and I'm all of the characters and I'm none of them.
Right. Yeah. And, relationships, friendships among women can be a minefield, but they can also be very nurturing and very supportive. And that's how you portray them in this story. And I don't know if you could read that section where Corina and Martita are taking a bath in their freezing attic room and painting their nails. And there's a lot of tenderness in some of those passages.
In real life, I would meet people sometimes for a weekend or sometimes for a couple of days. And, sometimes we were stuck sharing a space together, or somebody would allow me to stay with them for a little bit. They had crummy places that they lived, but, when you're homeless, everything looks grand and you're just lucky you're not paying for a hotel where all your money's flooding away. So this is based on a real memory of a moment that happened actually in Firenze, not in Paris, but like I said, this is I cut and paste from so many different places and created this story. Okay, I'll read a little trocito.
Okay.
It's raining a cold rain today, Martita. No, and let me start again because I don't have the right vision here. It's raining a cold rain today. Martita and I with our hair wrapped in towels, painting our toes. Marta tells me about a man named Angelo she was in love with in Buenos Aires. How when you make love with someone, it's never the same as with anyone else, is it? How every time you make love with someone, it's always completely different, right? And I say, Martita, I've never made love. Never? Not once? The rain on the skylight making soft little sounds, and the towel warm around my hair, and my toes being painted red. Ay, bufina. It's what religion is supposed to be. Like when the sun shines through the church windows, prettiest colored glass, and God isn't inside that building. He's inside you. I'll just stop right there because it goes on and on. But you know what? Yeah, I also recorded this in both languages, and it sounds better on the audio. And maybe because I was ready for the lines, and today I just kind of flubbed it. But I also recorded it with two actors that played Paula and Martita, and it was just like a radio drama. It's so cool. And it's the first time. Usually you read the Spanish for me, Lily, but I couldn't ask you to do that because Corina is a Chicana and I needed a Chicana accent. So boy, did I have to practice my French. And, I still mispronounced so much of it. So what? She's supposed to not be a native French speaker. So anyway, I hope you'll listen to the audio because I love how it sounds on the audio.
Yes, thank you. That's wonderful to know. Yeah, and that's a beautiful refrain. That part about what it is like to make love for the first time, and you repeat it through the novel a couple times.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like they're looking to satisfy that hole, or Corina, that hole in her heart, that loneliness, kind of to try to find her place in the world.
When you're that age, you think that a person is going to satisfy that part of you that's incomplete, or some grandiose event, or being at the right party, or some great city is going to make you complete. You're waiting for life to sweep you up and rescue you from you. Don't you think when you're that young? And that ends, I think, when you turn, for me, it ended when I turned 30 and I looked at the calendar and said, oh my God, I spent the last 10 years trying to please everyone else as to what I should be like, what is a good woman, what my father wants, what boyfriends want, what society wants. And I decided, time's a wasting, I got to get cracking here. And, I started, you have your destiny, but you got to help your destino a little bit, no crees? A little bit. So that happened to me when I turned 30. It was like turning 30 was a wake-up call.
Right. And you have some of the women characters, Corina, and they're all waiting for something to happen.
Yeah.
Corina's waiting to hear back from the residency in the south of France, and Martita's waiting for also some great opportunity, and Paola to not have to go back to her uncle's house in Italy. But it's like, yeah, don't wait, make things happen. And I think it happens to women a lot. Like, when do we find that agency, that ability to act on our own lives and not depend on other factors?
Well, don't you think it's the way we're raised too? Like that all the stories, and whether in film or telenovela, are about this waiting, this idea of waiting for someone to come fetch you, or life to have, the opportunity to come to you rather than making it happen. I mean, we're not
Yes,
trained to be
definitely.
active, we're trained to be afraid.
Yeah, and I goes like all the way to fairy tales, like Sleeping Beauty is waiting for the prince to wake her up.
My father in real life didn't want me to make this trip that this book is based on. He was horrified, but I think I got away with it because I was traveling for part of the trip with my friend who had family in Athens. And so the first part of the trip, up until Paris, and then we split, was with another Latina. And I think I did that so that I wouldn't be afraid, and maybe I could get past my father's wrath. And, he could see that I had like a kind of companion chaperone.
Right. At least at the beginning, right?
At least in the beginning, till I got, my sea legs, and then I could go off. And, you really get to know someone when you travel with them, no? Don't you think?
Yeah.
And we were not compatible traveling together, my friend and I. When we lived on the island, she liked being by the port, and I liked being way up on the mountain by myself. And that's fine. We have different ways of being. But when we were traveling together, from point A to point B, that was hard. That's what taught me, that I can travel by myself, and sometimes it's better if I do.
Right. Yeah. And you described some of those scenes in Greece in your memoir too. That there's that wonderful chapter about all your adventures there in Greece and how that trip started.
Yeah, there was a lot of moments where I made a lot of mistakes, or I trusted too much. And, the foolish mistakes you make as a young woman when you're traveling can be lethal. I was very lucky that the angels were looking out for me, because I had some close calls, but I didn't suffer what some women have suffered that I've witnessed, or that they've confided to me. A lot of the stories that women confided to me when I traveled make their appearance in this book.
Right. Yeah. And so tell us this pandemic and what has been the silver lining of it, or what
I got to finish a couple of books. I worked with Fernanda Melchor on the new translation of La Casa Street. I finished my next book of poetry, and I finished this one, which had been, jangling about in my pocket, and I wanted to get to it for years. So, and just canceling and clearing my calendar and staying home allowed me to write undisturbed, which, I'm the kind of writer that I really need to be by myself. I can't have people in the house when I'm working, and I can't talk to people. I'm muy delicada, I'm very fussy like that.
Because you go inside, really.
Yeah.
Inside.
I really need, I need to be in a monastery or a convent. And as sad as the pandemic has been for others, I felt guilty that I was flourishing by having my house was dirty, but and I couldn't, I still can't like organize myself. I can't put things away. There's things that happen. It was like, why comb your hair? Why put the mop back in the cupboard when you're going to pull it out and need it? There's kind of like an inability to finish a task, but the priority was to write. So I was able to, I couldn't finish housework. I couldn't even finish making the bed, but I could finish my creative work. That tells you where my priorities were.
Yes, well, we're all the richer for it, so thank you.
I remember even thinking, well, maybe I can cheat. The floor really was a mess. And la jerga is that cloth in Mexico. I'm looking at one, that red striped cloth. I just made little boots out of them. I soaked them in some soapy water, and then I wrapped them around my feet, and then I skated through the kitchen. That was my way.
I hope you put some good music while you were doing it too.
The music in my head is always the dialogue or whatever I'm writing. That's the soundtrack. But it didn't do a very good job. But it got me out of the kitchen quick and back.
Like the Roomba or whatever that device is, the little vacuum cleaner.
Yeah.
But with the jerga.
With my head on my feet, just kind of sliding. And it just went to show you like what was my priority. I gave myself permission to say, my mother had instilled this, bad women don't make their bed. Loose women, floozies, leave their bed unmade. And I had that in my head. And finally I was like, I'm writing. I don't have to make my bed. I even made a little like 60-second commercial for my Instagram telling women, if you're writing, you don't have to make your bed.
I love that. Yeah, I think we lost a lot of habits during this pandemic and stripped to the bare essentials and reevaluated what we really need and what we really want and what's
important.
Very superficial.
Yeah, that's right. And I needed to go from being horizontal, and once I was vertical, directly to my work and not thinking about housework, so or not being judged or not having that inner mother saying, bad Sandra, bad.
Right. Well, I think it might be time,
right?
Yeah, time for questions. Yeah, let's see. We have some from the audience, and Jeff, I don't know if you have seen any come through. Let's see. I don't know what happened. He's not here, but okay.
Are there some?
Yeah, here's one question. From Leah. Early in the program, Sandra, you mentioned being able to better write the story with the perspective or distance of age. Can you talk more about how it is to write fictional versions of your own experiences and how you create enough distance to write with clarity, but not so much that emotional authenticity is lost?
Well, I've always said this to writers, and I've said it before, and I'll say it here: the farther away a story is from you, the clearer you can see it, because you can see yourself in a way that when the event happens, it's this close, it's a poem. But the distance of time, you lose the sensory details. But that's easy; you just make them up. You can't remember what something smelled like, make it up, and you're the authority. So I don't feel that anything's lost, because I write about especially the things that I wish I could forget, and those come through loud and clear, even if 30 years have passed or 40, you know, the things I wish I could forget are lucid. Plus, I don't just stick with autobiography. I begin from an autobiographical journey or memory. And then as I'm writing, the story takes off. That piece that I read earlier where the protagonist says, you know, I've never made love. Well, that was not me. When she said that when I was writing, I was like, what? What? Oh my goodness, you know, I was really shocked. That's when, you know, she verged away from my wicked, wicked ways and went on her own journey. And the character, I was really, you know, if you give it enough kite string, the story will take off. And I think for me, I am open when I'm writing to incorporating other people's stories and cutting and pasting. I'm just very intuitive, you know, and letting the piece go where it wants to go, but it always has to begin from some very heartfelt, true memory. And then it just comes, it's like paper mache, you know, you start with little wire and you build and you keep building until it no longer resembles you.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Yes. Another question from Rosalie. When you sit down to write, are you thinking in Spanish or English?
Both, because in this story, you know, I wrote it, the beginning part in English, but I heard Martita speaking to me in Spanish. And so now that I live in Mexico, a lot more comes to me in Spanish. I talk to myself in Spanish. I dream in Spanish sometimes. So I feel as if both languages help me to express myself. Sometimes I forget the English words nowadays, now that I'm living here in Mexico, and I'll have to say, oh, I'll say the word in Spanish until I rummage around in my brain and think, how do you say it in English again?
Your cables crossed. Yeah. Yeah, and a reminder to the audience, there's the Q&A button, and I saw that there were some questions too in the chat. So if you can all put them in the Q&A, I would appreciate it. Let me see, there's more in the chat. It says, I am a 10th grade English teacher in the suburbs of Oklahoma. We're starting House on Mango Street tomorrow. Any advice?
But I'm not sure any advice on what? Starting it tomorrow?
Yeah, I guess how to teach it or what to say to the students.
Well, I think the introduction is very important. You know, I wrote that introduction because I got the same questions from young readers. Is this you? Is this true? And just like in Martita, I feel everything, you know, even if the story isn't mine, I have to somehow rummage in my own heart for the emotions that I can empathize with the story. So all the emotions are mine. The stories are composites of real people, sometimes several people fused together. And it's like the way I explain it, it's like a human hair wig made from strands of many different people. So the hair is real human hair, but it didn't all come from one head. Does that? You know, it didn't all come from mine. You know, I just take the strands and to make, in real life, a story rarely comes to you complete. And even when it does, it's like so many characters, it's complicated. So you got to kind of like, you know, pare it down to maybe just 3 people, and then you braid it and it makes the hair stronger, you know, so it makes the story better if you maybe take the beginning from you and the middle from someone you remember from 7th grade, and then your mom's story, you put it all together.
Yeah, that's a beautiful image. Yeah, from Gabriela, what other authors are you friends with, and how do they help you become a better writer?
Oh, well, we have many mutual friends between us, right, Lily? Yeah.
Yes.
The Macondo Writers Workshop, because we're both members, many writers, some writers that I can think of that Tulsa would know is Joy Harjo, who's been my friend since graduate school, since I was 21 years old. And man, we never dreamed we would be where we are now. We were the shy, quiet girls that were afraid to come to class and afraid to raise our hand and speak aloud. So we were terrified and trying to survive. It was very difficult for us. So I'm so proud of Joy. Let me think of other people. Elena Viramontes is a good friend. My friend Ruth Bahar, writer as well, and a Macondo member. Who else? Luis Rodriguez, John Philip Santos in San Antonio, Texas. Tammy Gomez in Fort Worth. Denise Chavez in New Mexico. I used to know the poet I in Stillwater when she was alive. In fact, I made a trip to Stillwater, Oklahoma, and she came to Macondo. Well, the many, many writers, those are just a few I can think of off the top of my head right now.
Yes. Question from Tori. Is there ever a character you start writing from an autobiographical perspective and they can never evolve into a fictional being? Do you ever abandon a character or story?
Well, I have lots of things in notebooks that I begin and then I don't open the notebook ever again. So I guess there were some things frozen in amber. But generally, when I'm writing something, if it's good, if I feel it's good, I can put it away for years and years, like I did with Martita. That was a long sleep. But I have things that I'd like to go back to. I have a hard time if it's like completely invented. I have to ground it in some experience or some emotion that's mine. I can't completely invent. And the more shameful or the more terrible memory, the stronger. If I'm afraid to write about it, then I know it's going to make a good story. It's going to transform me and allow me to get over some memory that is haunting me and censoring me. I try to write about the things that I feel censor me so I could wrestle and overpower them and not be ashamed.
Thank you. Question from Michaela. From one student admires your bold writing style in which you make strong claims. She would like to know what inspires you to write so boldly.
Well, I don't think I'm a bold, really, I don't think I'm a bold person. I think I'm a scaredy cat.
But in your writing, you're very bold. And I think
yes,
you were ahead of the curve in writing about things that we didn't used to see in print.
Yeah, that's why I write about them, because I feel like, why am I afraid to talk about this? And I don't like that. I know that writing for me is like permission to say the things I can't say out loud in school or I'm afraid to say because society doesn't want me to, it's not popular, it's not a good political belief. Whenever I get that feeling of, what, ¿qué dirán? What will they say? That's when I know that I have to write about it, because I want to be able to uncensor myself. I feel like I'm censored by society as a woman. And there's so much that we're told, that we can't even think or say, because that makes us a bad person, a bad woman. And I want to go there to those places that fence me in, not because I'm trying to be scandalous. No, I don't think of myself as a scandalous person. I don't think of myself as a courageous person necessarily. And believe it or not, I think of myself as shy, even though my friends will laugh. But underneath all the bravado is still the person I used to be when I was 11, a very shy person. Joy will tell you, because that's how I was in Iowa. And I don't want to feel bullied, by others into silence. I spent so many years of my education not speaking. And I want to make up for it. So that's why I go there. I think of poetry as being the room in the house of the spirit where I'm giving myself permission to think and say anything I want. And that's where a lot of my scandalous writing begins, in poetry.
Yeah, well, thank you, because I know those poems especially, and I mean, all of your writing has given courage to many of us to write and
We
explore.
don't realize it gives courage to me.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
That's why I do it. I don't want to be a miedosa, and I'm afraid of so many things in real life. When I make a list of like courageous women, I think, what? You know, I'm afraid of the mice and the rats. I can't go to New York at night. You know, I'm scared of so many things. You know, I can't camp, you know, because I'm afraid of rodents. I'm afraid of airplanes and fast cars. I'm afraid of driving. I can't even go on the swing too high without getting vertigo. I'm so scared of so many things. So maybe that's why on the page, I don't want to be afraid of speaking. And I usually make a list of like what's taboo for me, and I write from there.
Yes. Well, anything else you would like to add? I guess people can find out more of your events coming up
Oh,
on
I would,
the
yeah, I'd
website.
like to tell everybody to please join me on Instagram. I often post what I'm reading. I post what I'm eating sometimes, and I post my pets. And I post my pets because if I put a book that I'm reading with the pet, I get more responses. I use the dogs as a marketing tool.
Yes. How many do you have right now?
I only have 4, Lily. You know, when I lived in Texas, I had a whole herd of like 6 or 7 dogs, 3 cats, 2 parrots. I only have,
Yeah.
and they're all smaller than a cowboy boot.
Well, I think we're heading towards the end. I see Jeff.
Yeah, I just
Hi,
wanted to
Jeff.
take a minute and just to wrap up and say, first of all, just a huge thank you to both of you for doing this. It was just an absolute blast. And I hope that everyone watching has the book, of course. And I hope that either you have read it and are about to start your reread, or you are about to dive in and have this wonderful experience. And
I have a question. Jeff, is this conversation recorded?
yes, so we're recording this and this will be available. So anyone who's watching, you will get an email of this video tomorrow, and then it will go up on our YouTube page as well in the coming days. So a lot of people who sign up for this have, if you missed it or you didn't have a chance to see it yet, you will get an email with this video directly tomorrow. And then those who didn't even buy tickets for it, you know who you are. You guys are all cool and you bought tickets for this and got the book already. But all those people that didn't do it, they'll get to see it on YouTube in a few days down the road, and it will be available to everybody. So yeah, what a special evening, and this was a real treat for us. And I hope we'll get to do this sometime down the road. So thank you again to Liliana, and thank you to the great Sandra Cisneros. We hope you have a wonderful autumn, and we'll see you very soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
you.
Blast.
My pleasure.
Take care. Bye-bye.